The 15th of April, 1945, southwest of Bergen, Nazi Germany. The British 11th Armoured Division liberates Bergen-Belsen, one of the worst Nazi concentration camps, which would epitomize the true bestiality and horrors of the Nazi regime and its death camps. The British forces find 13,000 unburied dead bodies and almost 60,000 prisoners who are sick and starved. Thousands of other inmates will die of various diseases such as typhus and tuberculosis during the months following the camp's liberation. The British forces capture male and female Nazi personnel responsible for these horrors and force them to help bury the dead bodies in mass graves. One of them is Hilda Lissewitz. Hilda Lissewitz was born on the 31st of January 1922 in Bavarian Grunwald, then part of the Weimar Republic, which was the government of Germany from 1918 to 1933. She was one day short from her 11th birthday when Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany on the 30th of January 1933. Soon after, she became a member of the League of German Girls, which was the female section of Hitler Youth. These organizations, led by Baldur von Schirach, were the primary tools that the Nazis used to indoctrinate young people with Nazi ideology, thus shaping the beliefs, thinking, and actions of the German youth. Boys and girls were taught to be both racially conscious and physically fit in order to build a new future for Germany, and were often present at Nazi party rallies and marches. While in January 1933, the Hitler Youth had approximately 100,000 members. By the end of the year, this figure had increased to over 2 million. Jews were not allowed to join these organizations. Belonging to the organization was a significant time commitment, which interfered with other priorities such as church and school. During these meetings, the members were encouraged to abandon their individuality, wore the same uniforms, sang the same Nazi songs, and participated in similar activities. This time commitment and regular exposure to the Nazi ideology weakened the influence of parents, teachers, religious figures, and other voices of authority. In fact, the Hitler Youth and League of German Girls even encouraged their members to report to their leaders about what was happening in their schools or churches, as well as if their parents or neighbors were not acting in line with the regime. While boys participated in military training to be trained as future fighters and soldiers for war, girls prepared for their futures as wives and mothers. The League of German Girls emphasized collective athletics, such as rhythmic gymnastics, which German health authorities deemed less strenuous to the female body and was better geared to preparing them for motherhood. These activities also served to demonstrate the value of working together. The League trained girls to care for the home and family, and girls learned skills such as sewing, nursing, cooking, and household chores. In 1936, membership in Nazi youth groups became mandatory for all boys and girls between the ages of 10 and 17. Schools, too, played an important role in spreading Nazi ideas to German youth. From their first days at school, German children were imbued with a cult of Adolf Hitler, and his portrait was a standard fixture in all classrooms. While censors removed some books from the classroom, German educators introduced new textbooks that taught students love for Hitler, obedience to state authority, militarism, racism, and anti-Semitism. When the Second World War began, on the 1st of September 1939, Hilda Lissewitz was working as a gardener. From October 1940 to March 1941, she did her 6 months with German National Labor Service, which was the official state labor service, divided into separate sections for men and women. After the start of the war, it was also compulsory for young women, and its objective was to provide support for the Wehrmacht armed forces. Then she worked at home and at a railway buffet. From February 1943 until November 1944, she worked at a munition factory in Grunberg, then in Lower Silesia, and in late 1944, she was conscripted to the SS. She was sent to Langenbillau for training until the 29th of December, when she returned to the factory in Grunberg. Grunberg was a sub-camp of the larger concentration camp system known as Gross-Rosen. The camp was used for forced labor, and the female prisoners worked in the textile and munitions factories. The textile factory would produce material that could be used for uniforms, army coats, parachutes, and blankets that the German military needed. Because in early 1945, the bombing from the Allied powers was getting closer, the female inmates of Grunberg were taken on a death march on the 29th of January. In the freezing cold, the poor woman had to march without shoes and had to wrap their feet in rags. Their possessions consisted of a thin blanket, a tin bowl, and a spoon. Each received a hunk of bread to eat. Lisowitz is believed to have participated in guarding the death march from Grunberg to the labor camp in Guben, located 60 kilometers away, where she and marching female prisoners arrived on the 3rd of February. 1,400 of the 2,000 women died during this particular death march. The Germans began to frantically move the prisoners out of the camps near the front and take them to be used as forced laborers in camps inside Germany. Many perished or were murdered along the way. The exact number of victims is unknown. Part of these death marches were in unheated freight trains. From Guben, Lisowitz was ordered to Bergen-Belsen, where she arrived on the 3rd of March, 1945, and became a supervisor in one of the cookhouses. According to the inmates, who were lucky enough to survive the war, the daily portion of food consisted of watery soup, which was made from a variety of turnips cooked in water, and 3.5 centimeters of bread a day. The camp was so overcrowded that during the winter months, when it was freezing cold, the prisoners had to sleep in a sitting position on the floor and somehow try to share only 200 blankets in a camp of tens of thousands of prisoners. In March 1945, due to starvation, thirst, and the outbreak of typhus epidemics, the average daily mortality rate of the prisoners was between 250 and 300. At Belsen, Lisowitz became known as a deprived, vicious sadist. One Russian inmate, Alexandra Zividova, then a 21-year-old, described how Hilda had treated other prisoners who were dying of hunger and tried to get some food. Lisowitz was seen beating prisoners with a rubber truncheon for trying to steal extra food. Then after beating them, Lisowitz would report such incidents to the block leaders, who were in charge of the blocks to which the victims belonged, and they would beat the prisoners again. Lisowitz would also strike the prisoners on the head with a rubber truncheon, knocking them down, and then kicking them on the floor. Many of the prisoners had to be taken to hospital after this treatment, and some of them even died. Another witness, named Dora Almalech, then 21 years old, also described details of Lisowitz's sadistic behavior. One day, in April 1945, whilst at Belsen, Dora belonged to a working party detail responsible for carrying vegetables from the store to the kitchen by means of a handcart. Lisowitz was in charge of this working party. While Dora was on this job, she allowed 2 male prisoners to take 2 turnips off the cart. Lisowitz saw Dora do this, and pushed the men, who were very weak, to the ground, and then beat them on their heads with a thick stick which she always carried. She then stamped on their chests with her jackboots, directly over their hearts. The men lay still, clutching the turnips. Lisowitz then got hold of Dora and shook her until she started to cry. She then said, "Don't cry, or I'll kill you too." She then went away, and after 15 minutes, Dora went up to the men and touched them to see if they were still alive. She formed the opinion that they were both dead. She felt their hearts and could feel nothing. They were cold to the touch, like dead men. She then went away, leaving the bodies where they were. Lisowitz's reign of terror ended on the 15th of April, when the British 11th Armoured Division liberated Bergen-Belsen and she was arrested. The prisoners finally got food and clothes. Due to the typhus epidemic and lice infestation, the camp was then burned to the ground. Lisowitz was tried at the Belsen trial, which began on the 17th of September 1945, and was sentenced to 1 year imprisonment. She was released from prison on the 16th of November 1946, and soon after she married and took the name of Michnia. The former SS guard had 3 children, settled in Hamburg, and became a devout Catholic and a regular attender of Mass. But in 2015, her dark past caught up with her once again. On one occasion, she had confided to an Irish neighbor about her past and her nightmares about her time working at Bergen-Belsen. In the meantime, Slovak-born Tommy Reichenthal, a Bergen-Belsen survivor living in Ireland and active in Holocaust education work, gave a radio appearance in 2012, and soon after he was contacted by a woman who said she had lived in Hamburg, where a neighbor admitted she was a former guard in the camp where Tommy was once imprisoned. Tommy then traveled to Hamburg and tried to contact Lisowitz in order to reconcile with the former camp guard and offer her a chance to repudiate her past. But Lisowitz declined. Tommy's unsuccessful trip to Hamburg attracted the attention of the media, partly because he created a documentary named Close to Evil about his intention to meet Lisowitz. In addition, in 2015, state prosecutors, through an informant, were looking into whether Michnia participated in guarding the death march from Gross-Rosen to the labor camp in Guben, during which 1,400 of the 2,000 women died, as she could face charges as an accessory to murder. To this day, Hilda Lisowitz, today known as Michnia, insists that she was not involved in any atrocities. She never saw any corpses lying around at Bergen-Belsen camp while working there, and prosecutors should leave small fry like her alone. When a former SS guard, a convicted war criminal, and these days a regular churchgoer, was asked about her feelings toward Tommy Reichenthal and his documentary, which displayed her dark past to the general public, as well as to the prosecutors, she answered in a split second, he should be ashamed of himself.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Please help us to create more videos by clicking on the donation link. Thank you, and see you next time on the channel.